When you see that, what did it mean to you just to see the amount of attention and eyeballs that was getting?
It makes me so happy because women's basketball is booming right now. And if you really compare, LSU men's basketball hosted a game, gosh, I think 5 days ago, and they had maybe 2,000 people there. There were 13,000 people there for the women's game. And so, I just love it because one, Kim Mulkey is must watch television. This team is exciting and great. And two, the high level of basketball. I mean, shots were being made, threes are being hit. It was just such a great showcase of what women's college basketball has become, and I loved it.
That's something that's very special about LSU. It doesn't matter what sport it is, as long as you win, people are going to be invested. And that's exactly what Kim Mulkey has done for this program. But like you said, you were there. South Carolina, LSU, first to ever women's primetime game on a Saturday night. But what you saw on the court, what about these two teams makes them both national championship contenders?
Well, they're both loaded with talent. I mean, that game, if you played it 5 times, it could go either way. South Carolina is playing so well right now, and I give Raven Johnson a lot of credit. She is a fifth-year senior point guard, and she just makes the right play at the right time. Tessa Johnson, we're calling them Johnson and Johnson. It's either a new law firm or a new product company, but they are both playing at the very best level. Raven is just in this groove and in this place that I'm really happy for her because she has been criticized so much on social media. Her mom told me a couple of years ago after her redshirt freshman year, she was getting so much bad criticism on social media, she thought about quitting playing basketball. And here she is now at the top of her game and the resilience she has shown. I give her a ton of credit. But then for LSU, a woman that I love and is actually on our All-State and Active Good Works team this year is flau'jae Johnson. She's maybe one of the most accomplished young women I've ever covered in my life. And that is saying something. She's a, high-level rapper. If you haven't listened to her music, it is really good. And she doesn't curse. It's positive messages. Like I love her rap music. And then, she's just finding time to be one of the most improved, one of the most quality college basketball players in the country when she's not on stage with Lil Wayne. She's having this very intriguing life. So I think both teams are really good. I think we'll see this rematch potentially again in March. These are teams that can both make it to the Final Four, in my opinion.
I hope we do. We deserve that as basketball fans, as much LSU and South Carolina as we can get. And I think another thing that makes this matchup so fun is the respective head coaches. Kim Mulkey on the LSU side, Dawn Staley on the South Carolina side. And I think Dawn Staley has her team right back in a position to find themselves back in the national championship. In your opinion, you've had the wonderful privilege of getting to talk to and interview and learn so many coaches in this league. Where does Dawn Staley rank amongst some of the best coaches, not just coaching right now, but in women's basketball of all time?
Oh, I think she's going to go down as one of the best of all time. What she's done. I was lucky. I got to cover Dawn when she first started coaching at Temple University, and she really never wanted to go into coaching. And I remember doing a story where John Chaney, the former men's coach there, told her, you have a bigger calling and you can be good at this, and really kind of empowering her and telling her you should do this. And now here she is. She calls herself a dream merchant. Think of the young women's lives that she has changed, like Asia Wilson, Aaliyah Boston, Candace Dupree back in the day from Temple. There's so many people that Dawn has changed their lives. And I just think she'll go down as one of the best to ever do it. And really one of the greatest figures ever in women's college basketball, because what she did as a player helped elevate that game and that Virginia team back in the day. That's where I fell in love with women's college basketball, was watching Dawn Staley play. And so it's really a privilege for me now to get to cover her.
So, Holly, here's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. I've been covering women's college basketball since 2018 when I first worked with Sarah Spain, right? Like, we've seen the growth of the sport. And certainly we've talked on this show a lot about there's more talent than ever in women's college basketball. But here I sit 20 minutes still from UConn's campus, and I watch UConn just go out and absolutely roll everybody every night. How is it that the sport has grown so much and the level of talent is so great, yet UConn continues to separate and dominate at such a level?
Well, if you remember, UConn, there used to be this conversation that UConn's bad for women's basketball because they're just killing everyone. They were on a 111 game winning streak, and people thought that was a negative thing. And I always have thought the opposite. Is UConn's dominance for so long forced other programs to raise their level of excellence. I did the first game that South Carolina ever played at UConn. And I remember Dawn Staley taking her team in there and saying, I want them to look around and look at the banners. And that's what we want to be. And that's what we want to do. And that excellence of UConn has pushed other programs and other people to level up. And they have. So I think it's been really good for women's college basketball. I do think we are maybe back to a year where it's UConn and everybody else. In the last 5-6 years, I think it's been a wide open field. Anybody could win it. It is going to be hard for people to knock UConn off this year. It can be done. I'm not saying it won't be done. I'm just saying I think UConn is back to an elite level of performance, and really it's driven by Sarah Strong. I think she's the best player in the country. I think she's proving it every single night. Like, you'll look up and she's got like 17 points, 12 rebounds, and 8 assists. And you're like, I didn't even really notice she was working this hard. I just think she's that good. So I do think this is a UConn and everybody else type of year. If they stay healthy, I think it's going to be hard for people to knock them off.
Yeah, UConn is just unbelievable. But to kind of follow up what Fitz said, to his point, the game has changed so much. We have several new teams that have, entered the chat as national championship contenders, yet the teams that we do view as national championship contenders are all big-time Power 4 programs. On the men's side, on any given year, you can have St. Peter's upsetting Kentucky. You can have Gonzaga, Villanova, some of these non-Power 4 teams, or even Cinderellas every single year on the men's side. Why don't we have that on the women's side?
Well, I think we have in some respects. There was a year Mississippi State, they've been to 2 Final Fours. We've seen Texas get back to prominence. And I know Texas is considered a big-time program, but, when Jackie Stiles was at Southwest Missouri, we saw them make a run. Iowa, you could consider, until Caitlin Clark got there, they were not a perennial Final Four team. They'd never been to the Final Four before. And if you really look at it, UCLA, who got there last year, they had not been to the Final Four since Ann Myers was playing back in the 70s. So our Cinderellas are a little bit different. It's not the St. Peter's or the St. Francis's. It is the teams that have never been good in women's basketball before that are suddenly taking that jump. I'll tell you one cool story about UCLA. Corey Close took her team to play UConn, and they got beat by like 30 or 40 points. And she was like, I can't allow this ever again. And so she started studying Gino, and Gino would let her come and go to practices. She was there for 3 days and studied UConn's practices, their drills. She has been in a 10 or 12 year period where she has been studying the greats of how do I get there. And so to see her lead her team to the Final Four, that was really cool, because I know the behind the scenes work she's been doing to be like a UConn. And, they did get their butt kicked in the Final Four, but hey, I won't be shocked if they're not back this year and better this year, because she's been on that path of studying a way to become that elite program, and she's well on her way.
You're here with us on behalf of Allstate. They're the presenting sponsor of the NACDA Winter Good Works team. What can you tell us about Audi Crooks and her involvement with this?
Okay, this is so great. So Allstate NACDA Good Works team is made up of 20 student athletes. There were hundreds of applications from colleges around the country, and they narrow it down to 20 people. And this is really focused on what are they doing on the court? Well, on the court, Audi Crooks is leading the nation in scoring for much of this season. Off the court, she is making sure food is being delivered to people with food insecurity in her Iowa community. She's donating to the Boys and Girls Club. She's making sure that young people in her community have access to sports and sports teams and art programs. She is a very accomplished musician. She plays the piano. I think she plays something else too, maybe the drums. She is a very, very interesting young lady off the court and on the court. And what she's doing in her community, I got to go out there and surprise her as the team captain of this year's All-State NACDA Good Works team. And I was talking with their coach, Bill Fenton, and he was like, we don't have pro sports in Iowa. She is the biggest star in Iowa right now, and people flock to her, and she uses that power and that platform for good. So recently, when people's SNAP benefits were being cut by the government, she started a knock and dash program where they would bring groceries and meals and food to people who were having food insecurity. So this young woman is just, casually leading the nation in scoring for most of the year, and then making sure people in her community have meals and food and a way to thrive and survive. And I'm just so proud of Audi. She is a wonderful person. I don't know if you guys have met her, but if you haven't, you would just be absolutely obsessed like I am. She is one of the most wonderful young women I've ever met.
She is so impressive on the court and off the court. And I think not just the state of Iowa, but women's basketball fans everywhere have fallen in love with Audi Crooks. But what's another name, once we get into tournament time, that you think all of America is going to fall in love with?
Well, okay, selfishly, because we're here for All-State today, I'm going to bring up one other name for them and then I'll move on. But flau'jae Johnson. Flau'jae at LSU, she had a really tough game against South Carolina. She missed 2 free throws, but she's been their leading scorer all season long. She's doing it in her spare time while she's building a thriving rap career. And then she is doing backpack drives for back to school. She is donating to the KL Cancer Fund. She actually just did something really cool where she wiped out the debt of 5,000 families in Louisiana. Like, this young woman is doing more in her community than any student athlete almost I've ever covered in 30 years covering college sports. And she's doing it at a high level. So flau'jae is somebody. Sarah Strong is probably the best player in the country. I would say Joyce Edwards of South Carolina is in that conversation. Lauren Betts at UCLA is another player that people need to know because she will be a factor in March Madness. At 6'5", she's a handful. She might be bigger than 6'5". I forget her height, but sometimes she's over 6'5". And also TCU, Olivia Miles. People might forget that Notre Dame's great guard, Olivia Miles, transferred to TCU this year. She's had, I think at one point this season, she had 3 straight triple doubles. And so she's somebody that if you're filling out a bracket and you're like, oh, TCU, that might be a good Cinderella. Well, they're loaded with talent. They're not a Cinderella anymore, but they're somebody that you could probably pick in your bracket to go very deep.